Строить прогнозы на будущее – дело неблагодарное. Но согласитесь, многое из того, о чем когда-то говорили писатели-фантасты, уже сбылось. Недавно мне рассказали анекдот про машину времени. «Привет, какой сейчас год?» 2020. То есть 10-летний карантин только начался. Шутки шутками, но 9 марта 2020 года на Кипре был зафиксирован первый случай коронавируса. И вот уже целый год мы живем в совершенно новых, непривычных для нас условиях. Нас заставляют поверить в то, что вот такой и будет наша новая реальность или новая нормальность, как ее называют. Но у многих из нас само это словосочетание вызывает аллергию. Аллергию на ложь. И какой бы длительной она ни была, к этому сложно привыкнуть. Друзья, для того, чтобы не быть голословными, для того, чтобы разобраться в том, что происходит, проект «Островной инстинкт» запускает серию интервью. Нашими гостями будут эксперты из самых разных областей. Верить им или нет, пусть каждый решает сам. И выводы тоже делает сам. Сегодня наш гость – юрист, управляющий партнер компании «Georgiades и партнеры» Яннос Георгиадис. Господин Георгиадис, как житель Кипра и гражданин Республики Кипр, как человек с активной жизненной позицией и отец 4 детей, как вы оцениваете ситуацию, в которой мы сегодня оказались? На ваш взгляд, что сегодня происходит?
This is something that has influenced a lot of people around the world. It's not just in Cyprus, but I would say Cyprus is a small island. We were lucky that we didn't witness a lot of deaths like in other countries. And of course, there are not so many incidents as in the US or UK or Brazil. I believe as a family, like my family or any other family, they have suffered quite a lot in respect of social life or work. And this panic that it has been created by the media, I believe it has influenced a lot of people's life, this is for sure. It's good to be careful and to take measures and to be alert about any risks, but we must not forget that we, from the moment we are born, we have inherent risks, and if we are always worrying, we will never be able to live in this life, which is the purpose of coming here.
Мы знаем, что сегодня Министерство здравоохранения Кипра издает свои декреты, ссылаясь в основном на закон о карантине. Не могли бы вы рассказать нам, что это за закон, когда он был введен в действие, вводился ли он в действие когда-либо ранее, я не знаю, во времена чумы или испанского гриппа, так называемой испанки, и вообще сталкивался ли Кипр когда-нибудь в прошлом с подобной ситуацией?
Okay, Cyprus has experienced, of course, situations where there were epidemics, and since you mentioned Spanish flu, Cyprus also witnessed the Spanish flu back in 1918, 1920, and there are records about Cyprus going through this, and of course the Spanish flu was considered to be one of the biggest pandemics ever. And but at that time, from what I know, they didn't lock down the business. The people were free. They were careful. They were taking some precautions, but they were never. They never witnessed, I think, these restrictions that we are witnessing nowadays. The law that is applied now is the infectious disease law, or known as quarantine law, and it's an old law that we inherited from UK, because Cyprus used to be an English colony, and we got our independence in 1960. So we have similar laws. This is one of the statutes that we inherited from the UK. But this law that the minister is basing his decrees is only giving authorization to the Ministry of the Council of Ministers to make regulations, not decrees. And these regulations must be approved by the parliament.
Почему в таком случае депутаты кипрского парламента молчат и ничего не делают?
Well, this is something that a lot of people complain about. I believe it's unacceptable that there is no any reaction because it's not just a simple thing. It's a major thing, the pandemic. It is something that it is regulated in a massive way, and it influences a lot of basic human rights which are protected by our constitution. So the parliament, in my opinion, the members of the parliament, they should, in my opinion, make an issue about this matter, and the political parties, they should try to have a view about this, but they remain silent, and I consider this as unacceptable.
Даже для человека, не имеющего юридического образования, сегодня очевидно, что нарушаются наши права, наши с вами права, которые закреплены в Конституции Кипра. И у меня к вам вопрос, просьба. Не могли бы вы, пожалуйста, рассказать нам о том, какие вопиющие нарушения сегодня имеют место, и, может быть, привести какие-то примеры?
Okay, the protection of human rights is something very important for all of us, and is something that it has been safeguarded through the years in order to maintain democracy and the rule of law. Without a rule of law and without protection of human rights, then it's becoming the world like a jungle. In some cases where there are wars or there is a state of emergency declared by any country, or there are pandemics, they can be restricted, these human rights, for protecting the public health, but any limitation on human rights must always be done proportionately. And in order to protect democracy in the world, there are three powers in every country. Democratic country is the executive, which is the government, the ministers. It is the judiciary, the judges and the courts, and also the legislature, who are the MPs. The passing laws and regulations belongs to the parliament. So what happens now, especially, I mean, all over the world, but if we speak about Cyprus, is that they impose regulations which are infringing the human rights without being entitled to do it by law. And all these restrictions imposed and all these fines, in my opinion, they are not valid. Then, in the same time, even if they were valid, then they could be also unconstitutional because they are not proportionate to what they want to achieve. They are taking measures that it doesn't serve its purpose. At the same time, it violates unnecessarily the human rights.
I see. Can they change the constitution? Is it possible?
The constitution can only change by the parliament if 2/3 of the members of the parliament vote to make any amendment on the constitution. And in the constitution, there is a provision also that there is a right on the Council of Ministers to declare a state of emergency under Article 183 of the Constitution, which they haven't done, and only then they can issue decrees. And even if they do that, if they declare a state of emergency, the Council of Ministers, the president of the country has a veto, and also it has to be presented to the parliament anyway to approve it. But now we have a situation where the human rights, important human rights, are violated. So, for example, we have the right to strike. We have the right to run your own business without any limitations unless it's done in a lawful way. We have the right of life and corporate integrity, which means nobody can interfere with your body unless you give your consent. You have the freedom of speech, which again, it seems like is violated in a lot of instances because they're trying to stop people from expressing their own opinion. Therefore, we witness nowadays a lot of infringement of human rights because of the panic of the pandemic. And I would say the so-called pandemic, because although there is a virus and there is a serious matter here, and we don't deny that, at the same time, it has been described by the media in such a way that is created panic, fear, and it's making it look worse than it is. And also there is an issue on the way the tests are done. There is a scientific evidence that shows that the PCR tests that they're using, they do it in a way that it triggers results that they are false positive. So there are a lot of things that developing nowadays that and the more information we have, the more people now they're starting being aware of the truth and their rights, and they're trying to pursue their rights more than at the beginning.
Сегодня мы сталкиваемся с большим количеством ограничений, слишком большим. К некоторым из них мы привыкли, но к некоторым мы просто не можем и не хотим привыкать. Я говорю в первую очередь об обязательной вакцинации. Многие люди на Кипре боятся, что действительно это следующий шаг, к которому нас всех ведут. Ваше мнение по поводу законности этой процедуры и, опять же, как можно этому противостоять?
Okay. So far they didn't impose a mandatory vaccination. They impose a mandatory rapid test to school kids, especially now they did it for school. And this created a lot of reaction by a lot of parents who want to take action against the government and for the purpose of protecting the human rights of their children. And then they also ask our opinion on this, and now we're trying to take measures. We will write a letter to the Minister of Education and Minister of Health about this. These rapid tests and also vaccinations, I will also explain about the vaccination, they are regulated by law in order to protect the human rights. And there is an international convention that it was introduced in 1999. And of course, it was a continuation of other declarations and conventions. But this one is on the protection of human rights and human dignity in the area of biomedicine. And according to this, any intervention with anybody's body or for the purpose of providing treatment, it should be done with their informed consent, meaning that I should explain to the people why they're doing and what they're doing to understand clearly the purpose and all the maybe side effects and possible risks, and then they should get the free and informed so-called consent. In Cyprus also we have the Constitution, and the Article 7 of our Constitution it provides, it protects the right of corporal integrity.
Yes, I see it. Sorry for interrupting you, but with these PCR tests, they told us if you do not show the result, negative result, you cannot go to your office, you cannot work. They told our kids if you do not show us again,
yes.
So you are not allowed to.
So this is like a forced. It's like to force it on you indirectly by saying that if you don't do it, then you're not coming to the class. This is equal amount to an infringement of Article 20 or so, the right to education. They're trying to respond to that by saying if they don't do it, they can have online classes. But then again, they're creating another problem, which is a discrimination between these people, these kids, those that they're attending in school, the same class, and those that are attending through online. Now, with the vaccine, it's even worse because the vaccine is at an experimental level. I also spoke with Elpidophoros, so the realization he confirmed to me that all the vaccines are considered, and there's no dispute on that, they're on an experimental level. And these conventions I mentioned earlier, this is one of the main reasons they were introduced is to protect people from being guinea pigs and to experiment on them, unless in exceptional cases where it's necessary and where they give their consent, again informed consent. So I don't see any way that they will be legally imposing on people to do mandatory vaccination. If they try to do that indirectly again by not allowing you to travel, then again it will be wrong and unlawful, and it will be infringing. They will be infringing the conventions on the human rights and human dignity, as well as the constitutions of most of the countries. So if they do it, it will not be lawful.
Okay, but who will stop them?
Yes, this is a big question. It's a very difficult question. This is what that's why people are feeling frustrated, and this is why it's so bad. And people describe what is happening also as a crime against humanity, because the people that you're expecting them to support you, the system, the democratic country you are living, and all the democratic countries and the globally, the international institutions and associations that you're relying to find justice, it's giving you now the impression that they have changed and you're running the risk with the excuse of the pandemic to have your rights infringed and without being sure that your rights will be safeguarded. So this is something that the whole world, through the people's power, tried to change soon, the way they changed things when they saw what happened with the First and Second World War, and they learned the lesson, and they then started gradually to build the rule of law. So they avoid this to be repeated. That was war with guns. This is with a combination of a virus that also triggering and giving excuses to some people in good faith, some other people in bad faith to infringe your human rights and manipulate people in a way that is not human.
Вы только что упомянули профессора Гарвардского университета Эльпидофороса Сатириадиса, и в декабре 2020 года он написал открытое письмо обращения к президенту Кипра Никсу Анастасиадису, в котором он сообщил радостную новость о том, что, проанализировав статистику, эпидемиологи пришли к выводу, что смертность на Кипре в 2020 году по сравнению с предыдущими годами значительно ниже. И, к сожалению, власти по какой-то причине никоим образом не отреагировали на эту хорошую новость. Как вы думаете, как это можно объяснить? Почему?
Yes, you're right. I mean, the Elpidophoros Soteriadis, I know him well. He's a very good scientist. He's a specialist, and he is very honest. It's true what he says, but also it's so simple that even with anybody that has a calculator and sees from the official records the population of the world, which is about 7.8 billion, and then you see the number of deaths recorded without reducing the number, accepting it as 1.6 million, and you do the calculation on any calculator yourself, you'll come out with a number of 0.02. I mean, it is not something, it is a fact. Nobody can dispute that. So we have a very small percentage of deaths. It's true also that there are other causes of death through the years that they're causing globally. I mean, there are for other diabetic people, cancer, cardiovascular, a lot of them. Accidents, road traffic accidents, drugs, name it, a lot. COVID is not, the percentage of deaths is very low. And also, the ones that are recorded as deaths, they are not really all of them from COVID. According to scientists like Elpidophoros and other medical practitioners or general scientists, they record COVID even when the cause was something else. But if somebody dies, let's say from cancer at the age of 85, and they test him and he has COVID, they put him in that category and they announce the data and the statistics according to these numbers. So this is one thing that makes it unreliable. And also, I mentioned earlier about the PCR test. The PCR test now, everybody admits it, and it was always known this, that although it's a very good tool, it's not a tool that you can use it for this purpose. And if you do use it for this purpose, you should use it by customizing it on 40 cycles amplification, because they do amplify the molecules. A scientist can explain it a bit better, but in a simplified way, just to make my point, is that they should do the test on lower cycles of amplification of the molecule. This is what the scientists say. And it should be done between 20 and 30 maximum cycles, and not 40 or 45 they do now. And they should also point out, state on the report the cycles they did it. If they don't do that, and they keep doing it on the 40 cycles and 45 cycles, the scientists say that this gives false positives. This is another issue. It means that apart from the deaths, we have a lot of numbers of positive that, according to the PCR tests that they did, they knew, and they do know, or they should know anyway, some of the government people, that should take into consideration that the numbers that they record, they are not real numbers. And by acknowledging this, it means that they wouldn't be justified to take these strict measures as they do. They wouldn't be justified to do the lockdowns as they do.
Is there any responsibility for such a false data and publishing the false information, especially for mass media who are not, taking into account that maybe they have to check it, maybe they have to ask some questions? Nobody is asking nothing.
I believe that there is issue of negligence, and we have, because I was asked by a group of business people to advise them on their rights and as to whether they were allowed to claim any damages because they lost money due to the restrictions and due to the lockdowns, and the money that the government offers to give to people, they're not enough. They don't really cover their losses. They're very nominal. So now they see that this is dragging on, and they have suffered a lot, their business and their families, because they didn't have the revenue, the income to support their families. So these people, a group of them, they ask my opinion. And I believe, speaking about Cyprus, there is liability. One of the main things that the government itself use as an excuse for locking down the business is the inefficiency of the health system. I mean, said they were not ready. They were not ready for accommodating a lot of patients that they might get the COVID and they will need treatment in the hospital. This is, to me, is an admission for negligence, because even if we accept that in March last year they were not supposed to be ready, a couple of months later on, there's no excuse of not preparing, since they knew that this thing, it might carry on and it could be worse. And therefore, it's, in my opinion, an element of negligence that you say, because of my inefficiency to support these patients, I need to lock down all the business. In my opinion, they should find a solution. And there could be an easy solution. It could be getting one or two hotels, if it's so bad, and use them. And they will have 150 beds, 200 beds, 300 beds. The sky is the limit.
Yes.
They could
say
have,
if there is a will, there is a way.
yes, they could have staff. They could buy equipment. Therefore, this is one of the important example of negligence. And then there are three in my opinion. The other one is the PCR that I mentioned earlier, that because although there was scientific evidence that the way they do the test, it gives a lot of false positives, they ignored that. They didn't make anything to avoid this. And although they know that the PCR was done on 40 cycles and it's very likely that there were a lot of false positives, they still basing their decisions for lockdowns and restrictions on the numbers they get, although they know, or they should have known, that they are not true, all of them. Therefore, in this case, I believe the decision makers, the government as a government, but also the decision makers and the advisors to the decision makers, they could be liable for this. And the third important element of negligence is that according to the scientific evidence again, even if there is a serious pandemic, the lockdowns and the very draconian measures, they are not the solution to the problem. And this is backed up also by as the so-called Great Barrington Declaration, which has been signed by over 13,000 scientists, over 50,000 doctors, and over 750 ordinary people. And this, last time I checked, it was a couple of months ago. I mean, maybe now there are more. So according to the Great Barrington Declaration, the governments should focus on the elderly and vulnerable from the beginning, and they should restrict the carriers of the virus so they don't transmit it through quarantine, and the suspects, but not healthy people, and they should not close the whole community for the small minority of vulnerable people, since they can't protect them and they can't restrict them, and they are entitled to do that, and it would be much better for everybody, because the way they did it, they ignore also the collateral damage. I mean, scientists like John Ioannidis, who is from the University of Stanford, a very reputable scientist and a specialist, and others globally, they believe that the way they did it, they caused more damage than good, because there are more deaths that deaths were caused because of COVID, not because of the virus, but because of the panic it has been created, because of the suicide. People they started committing suicides. There are patients, cancer patients, dementia patients that have been ignored. People were not going to the hospital because they were worrying. A lot of examples. It should come to the attention of the governments and to their advisors to the governments and balance the pros and cons and trying to see what is the best solution. And then if they did that, then definitely the best solution will be what have been suggested by the Great Barrington Declaration, since all these people, the scientists they're graduates from Harvard, from Oxford. They're very well-educated people, and they're reputable people. And it's not just one or two. They are not crazy people. It seems like they never listened to this school of thought. They only took one direction, close everything down, and that's it.
In Cyprus we have case law, yes, and as far as I know now we are waiting for the first precedent, yes, with this court and everything. So we are waiting for the result and we hope it will be positive.
Yes, this is what we're trying to do now. So far there is no any precedent for this, but we will hopefully soon will be filing legal action. We will attempt to get a temporary order, interim order, to stay these measures because we consider them, as I explained, unlawful, and there is no any excuse of having unlawful decrees. But at the same time, we can see around the world there are certain courts here and there that they have issued positive judgments. Some of them have been reversed by an appellate court, some others not. And it's a developing thing now, it's just started. But there are good signs because it seems like the judiciary, the judges, are willing to give justice. And also in England, which is a country that has similar laws like Cyprus, I was reading the other day an article that it says the most of the, if not all I think, the prosecutions that took place so far against people who went against the restrictions, they were dismissed. They were wrong and they didn't go through. I would like to say that I'm part of also a team of lawyers that they are in Germany. Dr. Reiner is a reputable doctor, lawyer, that he went against also big institutions for fraud, even against the case with Deutsche Bank and Volkswagen. Is a prominent lawyer that he created a team, and in the group he encouraged other law firms from other countries. In Cyprus we are a representative for Cyprus. Don't forget that the people have also the right to go to the appellate court, and also if their rights are infringed and they don't find justice within their country, they can take the country to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. It's a court that exists, and it has proven a lot of times that it gives justice when the countries are not willing to give justice. So it's dealing specifically for the infringement of human rights. It's just a matter of claiming your rights and having the impartial court, independent judiciary, that it will decide according to the law. And then is where the citizens feeling confident and happy, and this is how we avoid anarchy and situations that they get out of hand, like we saw in Cyprus the other day, a couple of weeks ago, when the people trying to protest, a couple of hundreds of people, and the police acted in such a drastic way, as if they were hooligans and as if there was a riot.
Absolutely.
So this is not correct.
And the young girl was a victim.
Yes, this is not correct at all. I think the government should take seriously, any government in the world, they should take seriously and review their policies on this thing. before it's too late, and they should try to not to get out of this momentum of everything has to be restrictions, everything has to be lockdown. Every day, all the media must speak about COVID. Every day, this is not normal. This is, I mean, I don't understand why this they don't feel it, and they don't do something about it, because it's against humanity, it's against the world, it's against themselves.
Хочется подытожить и закончить наш разговор на чем-то хорошем. Как вы считаете, есть ли у нас шансы для того, чтобы все-таки защищать свои права, и есть ли лично у вас позитивный образ будущего?
I believe that if we look back and see that in dark ages, that in times that the democracy was not prevailing, in times that there were dictators, in times that they were not developed the civilization, managed at the end of the day to dominate the rule of law and democracy under such bad circumstances, I'm very optimistic and I'm very confident that it will also prevail, and much easier and quicker than before, because now we have developed already for all these centuries and years, through these centuries and years, we have developed the democratic societies around the world, and people, they know how to fight for their rights. And if we don't try, we don't get anything. If we don't ask, we don't get it. There will be sacrifices, there will be frustrations, but at the end of the day, rather than sitting around crying and wondering whether something will happen, it's better to act. And I'm very optimistic that despite the problems and sometimes difficulties that justice has around the world, overall, at the end of the day, justice prevails. And our hope is through the courts, through the justice, and through the lobbying and people's reactions all over the world, that we will see the change.
Fingers crossed. And thank you so much for brevity and for telling us your opinion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The pleasure was mine.
Thank you.